Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about language and why language is important, especially when you're talking about your relationship.
But of course, before we get into the topic today, we want to remind you to hit that like button. It helps us know what topics you're really enjoying. And of course, hit the subscribe button because when you hit the subscribe button, it makes me smile.
And if you would like to get bonus content, support what we're doing, dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline, the best place to do that is over on Patreon. A link to our Patreon is down below.
So in a relationship, we've talked a lot about on our podcasts about different ways of structuring a relationship, how body language plays a role in it. But I don't know if we've ever specifically talked about how language really plays into your relationship and really how important that is. And so when we're talking in a domestic discipline relationship, not only is it important how we talk to one another, but I think outside of the relationship, it's really important when you talk to others because there's a perception that can happen with other people that they don't necessarily mean to have, but that can really look at your relationship either in a negative or a positive way.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about how your behavior, how you conduct yourself, how you respond, especially as a taken in hand, how that really is a representation of your relationship to others. And we've talked a lot about how the language you use with each other is very, very important. But there is another element to that, and that is not playing into kind of these what have become tropes or jokes within our society, not playing into that and really having integrity in your language when you're talking to others about your relationship so that you are giving a fair representation of what your relationship is.
I can tell you that this was something that when we first started in our relationship, it was really hard for me to get out of these certain phrases that we use and the certain stereotypes that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there were moments where it was almost like it was so second nature. I didn't even mean to use them, but they just would come out and I'd go, wait a minute. That's not how my relationship is structured. That's not how I want people to see my relationship, but they just kind of came out. And so it takes time to really change your mindset and really think about, okay, before I answer this question or before I say anything, I really need to think through what I'm about to say before I say it rather than just blurt it out.
Because when you would do that, when you would get into those situations and you would use kind of, those joking phrases that you really didn't mean because they weren't indicative of what was actually happening in our relationship, it gave people the wrong perception of you.
Mm-hmm.
It painted a picture of our relationship that was not accurate.
That's true.
And in my opinion, it made it harder for other men to view you seriously and to give you the respect if you were painting a picture of not having that level of respect within your own home.
Yeah, it was definitely, and the phrases that we're talking about, it definitely gave the impression that I'm not in charge of our relationship or that I have to ask permission for certain things. And I'm not guiding things. I'm not the head of my household. All of the different phrases that that we use, it definitely gave that impression. And so the things that came out of that was yes, the perception that they probably had for me was, well, we know who, wears the pants in that relationship, as we've heard, or we know who's in charge there, and we know now he's going to have to go ask permission. But the other thing is that it also almost painted me in the light of, oh, well, he's the same as us, if their relationship works the same way. Mm-hmm. And it didn't, not that I was definitely trying to differentiate, but it automatically made it to where now if I were to do something a little different or they were to witness something a little different in our relationship, they go, wait a minute, I thought it worked this way.
And it prevents you from being an example or being able to give a perspective of what it looks like to lead to others. So if you want to be an example, if you want to show other men the benefits of having a relationship where you are the head of your household, where you are an authority in your home, it prevents you from doing that if you are continuing to use language that undercuts that position.
You're right. And you know what I realized too is we were just talking about this is you lose an opportunity to kind of share with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe someone who maybe their relationship is struggling, just like many of you all who are listening and watching, you were struggling before you found domestic discipline. And maybe you thought to yourself, if someone would have shared this with us earlier, we would have been able to embrace this earlier. And so I just thought maybe I missed out on an opportunity to help someone and help them in their relationship by the way that I responded, just that knee-jerk reaction of saying that common phrase and then going, oh, that was terrible. That's not how things are supposed to work.
And if you think that this is just a head of household issue, it absolutely is not. There are so many phrases that I've heard in more conservative wife groups where, you know, there's this perception that even as a traditional conservative submissive wife, that you have a level of control to manipulate your husband. Now, these aren't domestic discipline groups, but they are adjacent in the mindsets of submission. And even in those groups, I have heard a lot of different phrasing or just attitudes that as a submissive wife, it's your job to manipulate your husband into getting your way or doing what you want. And so this goes both ways.
Absolutely. What I think can even be more detrimental is that if you don't correct that language as you're trying to take your relationship forward and you don't correct that language when you're around other people, I really do think that what you'll find is that then you start falling into old habits in your relationship. And so you don't want to be flippant about this. You don't want to say, well, I messed up or, you know, I really don't think that, so I'm not going to pay too much mind to it. No, if it happens, I think you really need to pay attention to it because that could be a sign that that is something that's creeping into your relationship a little bit. And if you let it creep in, you know what happens with those little tiny things. Okay, they can become big things in the long run.
It does start to affect your mindset. I can't speak to the head of household side, but as a taken in hand, if I allow myself to believe that I have the ability to manipulate my head of household's decisions, that I have the ability to kind of set up a situation where I can kind of get what I want by doing certain things or asking a certain way or doing, I know that that mindset is going to creep in to how I conduct myself in my relationship, how seriously I take my submission, how I present my respect towards my head of household. Because if I believe that I can manipulate Coda and I can do what I want essentially and figure out a way to always get my way, I don't respect him and I don't respect his authority. And even if I surround myself with people that are constantly joking like that and I start to participate in that, I am allowing those mindsets to kind of take root.
Right.
You plant seeds with your words. And so every time you say something, every time you participate in a conversation, you do plant seeds with your words, and that can really take root. And I'm not saying that you need to avoid situations where there's other people that use those kind of jokes, but don't participate in it. I know that when I am out and about, when I am talking with others, when I am in social situations, especially when Coda's not there, I am expected to avoid conversations that paint him in a bad picture. That I am expected to avoid social situations where, you know, it is common for women to complain about their husbands. It is common for women to complain about their duties at home or their children. I'm expected to avoid those conversations because they don't edify my relationship and they don't build me up. They don't help me feel encouraged in my role. And I think that this is the same thing where if I participate in language that sows those seeds of a bad attitude or manipulative attitude, that really is not honoring to my relationship, and I should avoid it just like I avoid participating in complaining.
That's true too. And head of households, this doesn't get you off the hook either. You want to, just like Arya was just saying about the taking in hands, avoiding the conversations about their head of households, you need to do the same exact thing, because it's not that, and we know, it's not that husbands are immune to griping about their wives. Oh no, absolutely not. I have been in environments, and I'm sure you have, where they're griping about their wives. And you need to avoid those conversations. And you need to remember, just as Ari was saying, the things that you're going to say are going to take root in a couple different ways. They're going to take root in your own mind. So your own mind will play tricks on you. Your subconscious is very, very powerful. And if you plant that in your subconscious, it will influence your conscious mind to sabotage your relationship, even when you don't realize that that's what you're doing. The other thing that you're allowing to take root is you're planning a system with the guys that you're around, that your relationship works exactly like them, and that you want to participate, as Arya was saying, that you're willing to participate in all of those things. And then all of a sudden, whether you realize it or not, you're halfway down a conversation, maybe a half hour, an hour into a conversation, and you've said so many terrible things about your taking in hand. And what are you doing? You are sabotaging your relationship with the people that you're around. And again, you're planning all those things that you've just been telling other people about your relationship. So you're sabotaging things that you've worked so hard to fix in a domestic discipline relationship.
It's hard because we are hardwired as people to want to belong to social groups.
Yes.
And want to fit in with coworkers, peers, all these different groups of people that we associate with. We want to fit in. And so if that is how you've interacted with those people in the past, especially, pre-domestic discipline, if that was kind of how you fit in and how you acclimated to that social setting, it can be really, really difficult to change your language. And I think that that's what you were finding.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Is that pre-domestic discipline, you would acclimate to certain environments in order to kind of be considered one of the guys, or what, kind of in that realm and in that arena. And so when we started really getting serious about shifting how we approached our relationship, especially your authority in the home, it was really hard for you to make those shifts where it was no longer you having, insinuating that you needed my permission for things.
Absolutely. It was really hard. It was really hard not only to change my speech, but to change that action, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. And I think for myself, it was hard to understand that I no longer had, I never really called it authority, but dominion over the home.
That's a good word. Yeah, the dominion over it. Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, as a stay-at-home spouse, I do have a lot of dominion over our home, but I don't have decision-making power.
Right.
And that's the difference, is that before domestic discipline, my dominion over the home really did translate into decision-making power over anything that happened basically in our home and in our social schedules. And to be able to shift my thinking away from that to where now I do have to use the language when I'm making plans to insinuate that I'm asking permission.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. And so language really does matter from the standpoint of it gives you the opportunity to show your friends, show your social circles, and even show your coworkers that this is how my relationship works, and that's why I'm so happy with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we should be okay to be happy about things. I mean, one of the things we've been describing with these relationships, right, is it's usually negative. It's usually people griping about their spouses. And hopefully you embraced domestic discipline for the same reasons we did, is we wanted to have a good relationship. We wanted to talk good about each other. We wanted to have good feelings towards each other. We didn't want to be negative towards one another. That's what everybody else was doing.
Now, that's not to say that you can't have like close friends,
Right.
especially friends that understand your relationship dynamic, where you go and you seek advice. There's a difference between trying to just acclimate and kind of be one of the guys or one of the girls. Um, that's different than going to somebody that understands your relationship dynamic and expressing, I have this challenge or I have this concern, I need advice here. That's a good thing. You
Yeah,
should have people in your life that you can go and seek counsel from, that they have good perspective of your relationship.
absolutely.
That is not at all what we're talking about. You don't want to, because you should be able to seek advice, and you don't want to always be like, oh, everything's great, when things are actually falling apart and you need support.
Right. Not the false positivity, right?
Right. But you need to be able to discern who are those people for you, because not everyone in your life is one of those people.
That's true. That's true. And as you were saying earlier about kind of changing the narrative by your speech, you don't know that by changing your speech and talking in this positive way about your relationship, how you are going to influence the people around you. Again, maybe that's an opportunity for you to share domestic discipline eventually with somebody in your social group, to where it will help their relationship. Or if nothing else, it will change the narrative to where you will have more positivity happening in that social group. But it is definitely hard to walk into a place where there is negativity going on and there's certain language that is being said, for you to kind of go against the grain a little bit. That's hard to do.
It's very hard to do, but over time, that will bring more respect,
Mm.
more honor to your relationship on both sides. I think that now, this is a perception from an outside perspective, of course, but I really think that one of the biggest like social currencies a man can have is respect.
I think so. I think that is very true.
Respect from his wife, obviously, but also respect from his peers,
Hmm.
respect from his coworkers. And so when you undercut your position in your home, you're subconsciously telling your social groups or your coworkers or even your bosses, I don't even get respected in my home, so there's no point in you respecting me. Like, I'm not worthy of respect because I don't get respect from my wife.
And remember how I was saying earlier about what it will plant in your subconscious. What you're also doing is you're sabotaging yourself, because what will happen is that you won't fight for those things in social circles or even at your job to be respected, because you've already planted in your subconscious, well, I'm not even respected by my spouse at home, so why should I fight for respect in any other aspect of my life? Because we've always talked about how, and I think it's absolutely true, whatever happens in your domestic discipline relationship is a ripple effect in every other aspect of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
so if this isn't solid, you're right, you're sabotaging yourself here, you're just going to continue to have that ripple effect in the rest of your life.
And that's why it matters so much, because the language paints a picture of reality.
Absolutely.
And when you use language that does not paint an accurate picture of your reality, you are presenting a altered perception to the people around you, and they will respond to that altered perception. And then it'll lead to frustration,
Hmm.
because you'll be like, why don't my friends respect me? Why don't my coworkers respect me? And it's because you have given them the impression that you're not respectable, because you don't have that level of respect in your home.
You remember that lie that was out there that we would say as kids, that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, we know that that phrase isn't true, and we can even sabotage ourselves by, again, the words that we are using, that we think are just said for others, but again, they're coming back
Mm-hmm.
and hitting us. And the other thing that I think that we haven't touched on, but we should touch on quickly, is you need to be careful about that too, because what if it's, say, a company get together, maybe one of those holiday parties, and you're talking with the guys, but your taken in hand is there, and she overhears that. That can be not only detrimental to you, but then all of a sudden, maybe you've hurt your relationship because she's overheard it. And she now is thinking, wait a minute, I didn't think that's what was going on. But he is now participating, and maybe that the same thing, vice versa. Taken in hand says it, and a head of household overhears that. That can be really bad.
That's happened to us before.
Yes, it has.
Where I overheard Coda saying something. Actually, I think I was part of the conversation. I think I was standing right there. And
Sad to say.
and he did say something that insinuated that I was in charge of our relationship. And I obviously wanted to be respectful. I did not want to, everything inside of me wanted to just stand up and be like, that's not how this works around here. But that would have been disrespectful, and that would have not been, that would have like proven what Coda just said, not disproven it. And so I very submissively bit my tongue. And
she did. To her credit, she did.
But when we had a private moment later, I did express to you that did not make me feel good.
Right.
Because it gave the wrong impression of your position in our home. And I want you to have respect.
Right.
From me. I want you to have respect from others. Mm-hmm. And so it really made me uncomfortable because I felt like it was setting you up to not get the respect that you were owed.
And I will tell you, one of the things that was good that came out of that is, again, that was one of the things that I was just kind of pre-programmed to, which is why we're talking about this, because I wasn't even aware until Aria said something. And so one of the reasons for this podcast today is to try to make you aware, because until you're aware of what you're saying and how you're feeding into the narrative, you're not able to change it. And so by her doing that, though, it made me go, oh my gosh, I need to really pay attention when I'm around my colleagues, when I'm around other people, and we start talking about relationships, that I really pay attention to not only what is being said, but if something is said and that old way of thinking, that old way of talking starts to come out, that I'm able to kill it before it happens. And I start weaving a new narrative, that I start reprogramming my mind and myself to when those things do happen down the line, I have something new to contribute, and it's not the old things coming out. But that only happens when you're aware of it, which is why we've been talking about this today.
That's true. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I really hope that you got something from this conversation. I do believe that we're going to be diving deeper into this subject over
Absolutely.
on Patreon. Mm-hmm. So if you want to hear more about this and just more about the practical side of relationship building within domestic discipline, definitely check out our Patreon. Otherwise, we will talk to you guys next time.
See you later.